Now we'll learn about predicting death using solar transits and the 12th divisional chart. Now, while this technique itself is of course very interesting, what's really also equally interesting is the 12th divisional chart and how these classical astrologers were using it and what they thought it represented. So you might be asking, what is a 12th divisional chart? Well, all you do is take the zodiac wheel and subdivide each zodiac sign into 12 equal sections. And then you identify each section so that the first 12 is the same as the sign that it subdivides, and then it goes in order. So for example, the first 12th of Aries is Aries, and then in order from that, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, etc. The first 12th of Taurus is Taurus, and then in order from that. The first 12th of Gemini is Gemini, and then in order from that. Now this chart is being used in the technique to predict death. One of the obvious things about it is that it's the 12th, and the 12th is the final thing. But another very interesting thing about it is look closely at the way the subdivisions are sequenced. And so this is just like reincarnation. The one sign represents one lifetime. It begins by identifying with the sign itself, and then you progress through that lifetime, and then you get to this weird afterlife period when you're done with that sign, which is sort of this dreamy nowhere place, which is that forgotten sign, that dropped sign, and then you restart in a new birth where you completely identify again with the new situation. So for those two reasons, number one, the fact that it's just the 12th subdivision, and number two, the way that the sequence of the subdivisions exactly mirrors the experience of life and death and rebirth. For those two reasons, the classical astrologers use this subdivision to learn about the natives' death, etc. Now let's look at the technique itself. This is coming in chapter 17 of Paladipika, and that whole chapter is all about predicting death. So this whole series of videos we'll do on this subject. In the first two texts, we learned about using Saturn's transits to predict death. In the third text, in the video on that one, we learned about how to use Jupiter's transits to predict death. And in this video, we'll learn about how to use the solar transits to predict death. So how do we do it? What does it say? Paladipika says, Swasputa dvadasham sheva randreshe sthana vamshake lagnesha sthana vangsharke tat trikone piva mriti. What does all that Sanskrit mean? It means that death can occur when the sun transits trine to one of the following 3 points: its own position, the position of the 8th lord, and the position of the 1st lord, but not in the regular zodiac, in the subdivisional zodiac. And in which subdivisional zodiac? In the 12th subdivisional zodiac. So the first thing we need to learn to do is to find a 12th divisional position of something. So let's start with the sun's own 12th divisional position, and let's use Bruce Lee as an example. Continuing from the previous video where we looked at the Jupiter death transits, we used his chart there as well, so it's good to stick with it. Bruce Lee's sun is at 5 degrees and 14 minutes of Sagittarius. Each 12th of a sign is 2.5 degrees long. If you divide 30 by 12, it's 2.5. The first subdivision ends at 2.5 degrees, 2 degrees 30 minutes. The next one, the second one, ends at 5 degrees. And the third subdivision would end at 7.5 degrees, 7 degrees 30 minutes, which is past the point that we're looking for, past Bruce Lee's sun. So that means Bruce Lee's sun is somewhere in the third subdivision. And so now let's identify these subdivisions. Well, the first subdivision of Sagittarius is Sagittarius, and the second one will be the next in order, Capricorn. And the third one is Aquarius. So Bruce Lee's sun is in the Aquarius 12th subdivision. But that's not enough to know for this technique, because this technique is talking about the sputa, or the exact point. And so it's very close to the beginning of that third subdivision. So it's very close to the beginning of Aquarius in that subdivision. And here's the math on the screen right underneath the chart to show you exactly how you would figure out what degree it is in Aquarius. Bruce Lee's sun comes out to be at about 3 degrees of Aquarius in the Dvadashamsa, 12th subdivision. So to do the rest of this technique, we also need to know the Dvadasha position of the 8th Lord and the 1st Lord. So let's do the 8th Lord now. Bruce Lee's 8th house is Cancer because that's the 8th sign from Sagittarius, which is rising, and the Lord of Cancer is the moon. So we want to know the position of his moon. Well, his moon is at 11 degrees and 24 minutes of Scorpio. Now we can use that information to figure out where his moon is in the Dvadashamsa, in the 12th subdivision. The first subdivision ends at 2.5 degrees. The second subdivision ends at 5. The third ends at 7.5. The fourth ends at 10. And the fifth ends at 12.5. So Bruce Lee's moon being around 11.5 degrees is somewhere in that 5th subdivision. Now we just need to identify that subdivision. So the first subdivision of Scorpio is Scorpio, and then go in order. The second one is Sagittarius. The third one is Capricorn. The fourth is Aquarius. The fifth is Pisces. So his moon is in the Pisces Dvadashamsa. And to figure out the exact degree, you can guesstimate that it's somewhere in the middle. And you can do this exact math, and you can figure out that it's at 17 degrees of Pisces, more or less. Okay, now let's just find out the 12th subdivision degree for his first lord, and then we're ready to see how the technique would work. So his rising sign is Sagittarius, so his first lord is the lord of Sagittarius, Jupiter. His Jupiter is at 7 degrees, 32 minutes of Taurus. So the first subdivision of Taurus ends at 2 degrees, 30 minutes, the second one at 5 degrees, the third one at 7 degrees, 30 minutes. Now, what did we say his Jupiter's position was? 7 degrees and 32 minutes. So it's just barely in the 4th subdivision. What is the 4th subdivision? Well, the first one of Taurus is Taurus. The second one is Gemini. The third one is Cancer. The fourth one is Leo. So his first lord is right at the beginning of the Leo 12th subdivision. If you do the math that's shown here, we'll figure out that it's at 18 minutes of Leo. Now that we know these 3 points, we can use them. And the technique says when the sun transits at or trying to these 3 points, you die. So in order to work with transits, let's put Bruce Lee's chart into a wheel format. Then let's add these 3 points to the wheel. Even before going further or going into the actual technique itself, just putting these points on his chart brings out an interesting observation. The Dvadashamsa point for his sun and the Dvadashamsa point for his first lord are both pretty well exactly square to the 2 malefics, Saturn and Mars. Maybe this is a heads up to basically the reason why I like to use his chart for prediction of death, because he died very young and unexpectedly. He died on July 20th in 1973. So let's get the positions of the planets for July 20th, 1973, and put him outside his birth wheel. What we want to see is whether or not his sun is trine to these 3 points. Well, in fact, it is. It's very close to being in exact conjunction with his first lord's 12th subdivision position, and it's quite close to being exactly trine to his 8th lord's Dvadashamsa subdivision point. The other one, the third one, which is the sun's own 12th subdivision point, is exactly opposite to where the sun is transiting, which isn't literally a trine, but is still an active transit. So that's how you use this technique. If you're interested in this sort of thing, prediction of death and how the classical astrologers use the charts and the transits, you can watch the previous 2 videos that we did on Saturn's death transits and Jupiter's death transits, and make sure you subscribe so that you get the future ones. We've got a whole chapter ahead of us. Please leave a comment and a like, and thank you so much.